Hello, my name is Hemish Shishkant Yadav, and this is second video of explaining the code base, database structure, and automated test case for the role of SDET intern in Unq Code Cloudbook. And so we'll start with our code base. So here, this system is built using Node.js and Express.js. MongoDB is used for the database with Mongoose for schema and JWT tokens for secure authentication, as well as Zest is used for automated test cases and Zest framework. Okay, we will start with our code base structure. So we have here SRC folder which contains the folders to we are so this is organized into the folder structure so that it's keep module code modular as well as maintainable. So first we'll start with the models. Models contain all the structure, database structure. So it contains all the schemas of using Mongo schema. Next we have here controllers. All the controllers. The controllers is processes controller processes incoming HTTP requests and sent to the appropriate services. So we have here services. So services contains all the business logic, which is essential. uh, this will execute all the business logics. We have all the business logic here. After that we have here middleware, which is used for authentication and authorization. After that we have here routes, which contain all the RESTful API. So we have written here all the APIs which calls the controllers. After that we have here utilities. So these are some basic utilities. So for JWT we have here generate token as well as verify token. While validation, we'll check with validation with express validator. And the config contains basic database information. So connection, basic database connection. So this is the folder structure. We have here server.js with our entry point, and with this we have a test folder which contains setup, which is required for the test, uh, as well as the mm, automation test file, which contains all the 9 test cases which are given here. So the all 9 test cases are end to end applied here, with connection starting to connection end after all execution. So we'll start with source folder. So in server.js, here we have uh, starting with external dependencies. So we have express course for cross origin resource sharing, which used for communication with backend frontend. Swagger UI and Swagger JS docs. So this is for documentation. So we have here this documentation form which generates the readme and documentation for us automatically. So after that, these are internal dependencies. So we have included all the files here. After that, we have here .env configuration for environment variables. After that, we have initiated the app, Express app. We implemented course and JSON. Later, we connected with the database. So we have initiated here database, which comes from our config. So as you can see, we can config. It will start the connection. After the connection, we have here API, Swagger JS docs. So calling this API can generate us all the swagger.json containing all the information of this project with folder structure and all the APIs present. Okay. Later we have here our routing APIs. So we have all the routes which are here. We have created here APIs, and we have started this port on port 3000. We have started the server, and this is used for uh, what you can say, error handling. So whenever something error happens, it will call this error stack. So it will log this error as well as return the code 500 for the server side error with the general text message. So after this we'll move to the routes. Okay. We have here routes, all the routes. So starting with the auth route. In the auth route we have authentication APIs, so register as well as login. So in this, when a user will call this register, we will parse the body and get the information, and we will validate it with functions like is email, whether the password entered having minimum length of 6, his name is empty, and what is the role. After this, after validating this, we will move to the auth controller and register. So we have auth controller, which is a controller which contains which handle incoming. So this API will call auth controller. So this is incoming HTTP request, and it will redirect to the services where we have here service of register user. So this service will be called, and in register user we have all the data. So it will check whether it's already present or not. if, if it's present, it will throw. This throw will be cached here, okay, in the main server. We have already done, so this will cache here. After that, okay, after that it will create user object, which is from here, our models. It will create user and it will save generating token. So it will generate a token, JWT token. After this, our second API, which is login. So this calls a login method to authenticate with the user and issues the JWT token, as you can see. So we have here controller. It will check. Uh, it will first get the body, which is the email and password, and it will call then authentication service. So we have here uh, authentication service. We have here our body, business logic. So it will check. So we will first find. After after finding, it will check whether the user is present. uh, if present, and later it will check with await of comparing passwords. So we have here function of comparing passwords, which is jwt utils. jwt utils. So we have here compare password. Okay, so it is present here. So yes, compare password, it's already embedded into the user only, which uses bcrypt. So while developing this schema, we have here, so whenever password is entered while registering, it will modify it. It will create its hash using bcrypt library. So for storing with more secure, we are hashing the password and the storing it, and we have this function which are embedded into this user object itself, which will compare with the candidate password which is existing, and one we will enter. So one we are calling and one we have already present, so that original password we will check with the entered password, we will compare. So after that, after getting both, if any of these fails, we will throw the error. Otherwise, we will return the generated token. So we will generate JWT token for the further operations. So this was our authentication routes, both routes. So after that, we have here availability. So whether the professor is available. So checking the availability. So here we have role based authentication. So we will check first is only professors are allowed here, so we'll authorize professors. So we authorize, we have written authorized code here in the middleware. We will check the user who is entered here, whether it's professor or not. If it's not, he is not getting the credential, or he is getting the error of unauthorized access. So before that also we are authenticating. So what this authenticate check, we'll check with the present, if there is a token present. So if our request header authentication, we are splitting the authentication and checking the token if the token is present. So after that we are decoding that token, and we are getting the user ID and password. So we don't want the password, so we are not getting the password from, we are getting just user ID. Okay, so and later we will check if the user is authorized or not, and if it's authorized it will call the next, which is callback function, which is this authorized. If authorized is also true, then we will check the body of start time, end time. Okay, later we also have checking the professor ID, availability of professor ID. So here in second will the availability information of specific professor. So based on the professor ID, we'll get the availability. So for that also we are authenticating whether user is validated, authorized or not. And after that we are calling the next function to get the professor availability from the controller. So controller will also redirect us, so availability, and getting parameters like professor ID from it will get to the service. So we have here service, which will check whether propose, find one and delete. The check if it's available or not. After that we have here slot ID. Based on slot we can also check. So this is authenticated for professor. So delete, we can delete the slot. First we are posting the slot, we are getting the slot, and we are deleting the slot. So here two of them are authorized for professor only, and only one is authorized for all of them, both. Okay. Later we have here appointment. So appointment contains three routes of getting appointment. So creating appointment, getting appointment, as well as searching appointment, deleting appointment. So first you have posted. So we are posting new appointment here. So here as you can see, controller creating appointment. So in creating appointment we are getting the user ID, the professor ID, the slot ID. So in the services, or in the services creating, what you are getting, we are finding the slot, means availability, we are finding. Okay. If the slot is not available, we are doing slot is not available. After that, we are creating new appointment as our in the appointment table. We are creating new appointment and we are getting it as a book. So we are here creating appointment. We are fetching all the appointments which are available. So get all appointments. So this will get all appointments. So it will check whether a role is your student or not. So it will fetch based on the rule. It will fetch the particular ID. If it's students, it will get student ID and the professor ID. Later, it will delete. If a professor want to delete, it will delete the appointment. Okay. So after that, we have here appointment. So these are the main routes. So we have here a middleware, which we have seen authentication and authorization middleware. So authentication will authenticate whether the user is authenticated or not, and it will also authorize the authorize based on the role. So we have seen whether the role is professor, then only you are getting the role access. If not professor, then not getting access. Okay. Then next or we have is controllers. The controllers for the each we have here getting the HTTP request and forwarding to the services, calling the appropriate services. Okay. So for the authentication, so for the register, we uh, validate the user data with auth service registry. So first we will uh, validates and generates a JWT token, and in login we are validating users email ID and password using this method which have services, and on success it will generate JWT token. Later we have here availability, which are upon checking the availability, adding availability, getting professor availability, remove availability. Okay. In add availability, this allows professor to create new availability slots. So professor can create the slots, will take start time, end time, send it to the service of, and that service creates the availability and add it into the database, and it returns the code which is 201 or the 500, which is a failure. It's not possible. After that, getting the professor availability. So it retrieves all the availability slots for the specific professor by their professor ID. So we have the professor ID sending it to the services and will fetch all the available slots, means created slots. After that, we have remove availability. So remove availability allows professor to remove an availability slot by slot ID based on slot ID. Ensure that slot belongs to authenticate professor. First, we will check whether that slot is authenticated to the user or not. Whenever we are here, we will check if present for that user or not, for that user ID or not. If it's not, then it will show the error that 404, that slot doesn't exist. And if it exists, it will find and delete. So find and delete. Okay, so these are the controllers. So controllers are calling the services, right? So we have here services which has a business logic. So you can see registration. So registration, we are finding one, create. If it's already exists, we are throwing the error. If it's not, we are creating the object and we are saving and we are generating the JWT token and returning. If it's also login, creating login, we are finding one. If it's not, if user is not exist, we'll throw this. If user exists, we'll compare the password. So compare password is a function which is already present in that user. So it will use bcrypt library as we seen to compare the hash with the entered password. So if it is wrong, then it also shows that invalid credentials. Otherwise, if both are true, uh, both are true, like so it will not enter in this and will generate the token and returns. So next we have here availability. So availability has creating availability, three services as you can see. So created availability creates availability uh, in the new table. So we have here availability table which adds the data into it. So with professor ID, start time, end time, it add into it. After that we are getting the availability. So we are finding all the possible availabilities which are available for the professor, and we are removing all the availabilities based on slot ID. Find one and delete. This is the availability service. The appointment service contains creating an appointment, um, get user appointments, and cancel appointment. So while creating appointment, we need student ID, professor ID, and slot ID. So for which slot, which student and which professor getting appointed. So this uh, saved to the availability table and with the slot status as booked. How many slot availability as booked. So before that, we will check if there is any availabilities present or not. After that, we are getting the user appointments. So based on user ID, who is the user? Either student or professor. Based on role, we are we are getting either professor or user, and we'll check so it's present or not. So it will return us that student ID or professor ID name, email. After that, we have here cancel appointment. So here cancel appointment, uh, cancel the existing appointment. So here verifies the appointment exists or not. Ensure that user has the permission to cancel. So we have here return function can cancel. Okay. So if role is student, so based on student ID, it's cancelling, or professor ID, it's cancelling. Okay, so we are checking whether we can cancel, and here after cancelling we are removing find by ID, and we are removing that slot so that we are making that slot available. So it was booked here, we booked here and make it available here. Okay, after that we have here authentication. Okay, we will done with services, and as we are seeing utility classes generating token. So we have here JWT token, which is our secret key using which we are generating signing JWT token to the user, specific user, and we will verify the token with the token and our existing JWT token. In the validation also, we'll validate the result with express validate. So request is validate or not. Okay. So all our source files are done. So we'll move to the test folder. So test folder adds his own setup. So setup contains JWT secret, MongoDB URI. We are running in local MongoDB. So we have a local host and node environment of test. We have here code of nine all nine of test cases. So here we have here global variables which act as a cookies. So it is not the we are not implementing here cookies. So it reflects as a cookies which are present in the web browser. So we have implemented a global variable so that it can behave like a cookies. So here student token, we have two students and one professor. So all the tokens, and we have professor ID. So professor ID because we are fetching based on the professor slot. We are fetching the slot based on professor, and the time slots ID. Okay. So we have here function which is given by zest that mm, before all. So before all function what it does, it will before executing this all the test cases, it will execute this code. So in this code we are connecting with the MongoDB. So this is end-to-end automation test case. We are initiating the connection, creating the database, executing the all the test cases, and then at the end we are dropping the database and closing the connection. So from start to end we are performing all the activities. So here as you can see, so this is after all. So after execution all the test cases, we are dropping the table. So we have here 9 test cases. So these are divided into the 4 section, like based on the categories. We have 4, like user implement authentication, professor availability management, checking the professor available, appointment booking, appointment cancellation, and verification. So we'll start with authentication. So first we are a registration. We are calling this registering, and where we are sending the data, which is student name, password, email, password, name, and role. So this is getting validated, and it will issue one JWT token for this. So this token is stored here. Here token will be stored. It will check whether it's 201. 201 is successfully created. After that, we check that it has property of token, that body. If present, then it will be stored into the token. Similarly, we are creating one professor. We are posting a request into app. Similarly, we are posting a request into app. We have here this API which is already written into the server. So these are the API. This is API. After this, we are decoding the token for professor so that we can get the professor ID. So uh, using the JWT JSON web token, JW token, we are verifying the professor token with our token. If it's present, so it will decode, and from the decoded token, we will get the user ID, professor ID, and this will be user for fetch availability. So as you can see, we are here. Professor P1 specifies which time slot is free. So here he is initiating and the time slots. So for that we have here date object. We are creating date object, and we are getting current time. So from current time plus 1 means from, if it is 10 a.m. where he is creating the appointment time slot, so the appointment will created from 11 to 12. So we are adding one more hour. So he is creating an appointment 1 hour before. So at 10 a.m. if he is creating an appointment, the appointment will be created by 11 to 12. Okay, so we are getting here. So we here 1 hour from that uh, current time, and end time will be 1 hour, 2 hours from current time. Like means the appointment sessions will be of 1 hour. Session will be of 1 hour. So we are posting this uh, availability into the availability, and checking while posting we are setting our professor token for authorization. So it will authorize the whether the role who is posting is professor or not. So for access or the unauthorized access, as you can see we have written in middleware. Eh, yes, verification. After that we are converting into the strings, so that to be entered into the schema database. So when it will send, it will get the response. First response we checked by, if the response is 201, and we will get the id, time slot id. So slot is created, the slot id we will get. After that he's also creating one more slot with the end time. Like if here he's creating from 11 to 12, so later he will also create from 12 to 1. So he is creating two slots. Okay. Similarly he will create two slots. After that student A1 use the time slot of professor P1. So professor already created two slots. So now student will check whether the slot is present or not. So what students fetch, so it will get the API from the professor ID, which are already written in route availability. Yes, get API based on professor ID. So based on this, we will get professor ID. And here for authorization, here sending is student token. And for this response, he will get status code as 200, that successful execution. And in return, he will get it's true or not. It's response.body array. He will get the array of time slots. Okay, and as here we have created two slots, we are validating it to be two. Yes, the slots length, the array which we are getting should be of length 2, body of length 2, so that we are validating whether two slots are created successfully or not. And the student, when we are fetching, he is getting also two slots or not. After that we have third, appointment booking. So here A1 will book appointment. So he will call the API, post API of appointment with his own token, authorization token with slot ID and professor. Who will check for that slot ID professor is present or not. It's based on professor ID. Okay. After that we will check if it's true, it will create an appointment. We have created, it will return the code of 201. That we'll check whether the id, slot id is present, appointment id is present or not into the body, and we'll set into the appointment id one. So we are setting into this because we are later cancelling this. For that we are setting the global one. After this, setting A2 for authenticating the user uh, to access the system. So we are creating one more user. After creating it, we got the token of second user. Second user is also getting setting the slot. That's slot ID and professor ID. So there are slots based on slot ID and professor ID we are setting. Okay. So here T2, as you can see, second slot. We are setting for second slot. A1 is set for first slot, A2 is set for second slot. So here both appointments are booked, both slots are booked. So later we can P1 cancel the appointment with student A1. So P1 doesn't want to appointment with A1, so first appointment which will be there. So he will cancel. So you call delete method with appointment ID. And after that, it will get status of 200 means uh, successfully deleted. Later, A1 checks if he has no pending appointments. So it will check its own appointments. So while getting appointment, he should get that true 200 means successful execution, and there is array present or not of appointment array is present or not. So for which we are checking that appointment schedule is scheduled, but pending appointments are zero. Appointments pendings are zero, and cancel appointments. So for cancel appointments, if the appointment is cancelled, so based on the A1 ID appointment A1 which is cancelled here, so professor cancelled here. So we'll check if the pending appointments are zero. So appointment is not pending also, and cancelled appointments are A1. So both are checked. So if we run this code, as you can see, it will end-to-end test cases will start with the port starting, connection, database connection. Later it will check all the test cases, 9 test cases. So it was one single suit, so one single suit is passed, 9 test cases are passed, and we are closing. So after closing we are getting this error. So that was the second video explaining the code base. Thank you.